Attorney Kimberly Muenter is back today with us to discuss the important topic of a power of attorney. Good morning. Welcome back. This morning we're actually talking about a durable power of attorney, which I have to be honest, I had not heard of before. I think a lot of people hear the term power of attorney. This morning we're talking specifically about financial power of attorney. But what is a durable financial power of attorney?
Well,
why is there a difference?
As you said, there are lots of types of power of attorneys. You can have just a limited one to sell a piece of real estate. But in the arena of elder law, I usually deal with durable power of attorneys. A durable financial power of attorney is where you designate some other individual to handle your financial affairs. But the difference with the durable is that it states specifically, this remains in effect even if I become incapacitated. And it must have that verbiage in the power of attorney to be considered durable.
Do you think a lot of people are maybe missing this step, or why was this important, you think, that you wanted to bring up today?
Well, I think many times people go to their real estate attorney or to other types of attorneys to do maybe estate planning. They may say, well, I do some wills on the side, but it's important if you go to an elder law attorney, they're specifically going to discuss with you the importance of having that durable power of attorney language in there, because we see what happens often when people are older and incapacity occurs, that you have to have that in the power of attorney.
Yes, I'm sure, and I think a lot of these days with online being as big as it is today, and maybe people just think the easiest thing to do, you know, is to try to do it on your own, but you really advise in kind of what you're trying to put on paper, that you know what it is that you're signing and creating a document for.
Yes, it's very important. I often have people come in with power of attorneys that they've created themselves, and almost every time something is done incorrectly in it. And that's not the time you want to do that, because once your loved one is incapacitated, even if it's just for a temporary amount of time, they cannot create a power of attorney. So then it would be necessary to go to the court and get a formal guardianship, which is very costly, a minimum of $3,000 to $5,000, and the court will be involved continuously. So for a minor investment of money, to have a power of attorney can save your family a lot of expense and emotional costs as well.
You know, we've talked before about how you're kind of specialized with the elderly, but how soon should you be looking at something, getting a document like this?
Well, actually, every adult should have a financial durable power of attorney, because even if someone young just had a car accident and was temporarily unable to manage their finances, without that document, a guardianship would be necessary. So everyone should have a power of attorney for sure. The durable power of attorney is especially important as we get older. And as I do elder law, so in your 60s, it's really mandatory or necessary.
And we were talking earlier too, it's not only important to make sure you have it done, but to make sure that whoever is the power of attorney, whoever you are signing that, make sure these conversations are being had with that person, with their family, so everybody is on the same page. They know where to find these documents as well.
Yeah, that's very important. I tell my clients they should have a kick the bucket list in addition to their bucket list. So, and the kick the bucket list is they should write down every asset they own, where it is, an account number, even if it's online accounts, and they should tell their child or their children where this will be, where their wills will be, where their original documents will be.
Is there a place that you recommend? I mean, is it okay just to keep it in your home, or, I mean, what do you suggest?
I think a safe deposit box is probably the best place because of the flood and fire risk, but if you do that, be sure you list at least one child as someone that can access the box. Or if you keep it at home, be sure you let them know where it is. And with those documents, keep a list of all of your property, because many times when someone passes away, we can't find the assets they had because the parents, being very private, didn't want to share that.
And you were saying that's why that list for the state of Florida, where, I mean, there's a lot of kind of unclaimed money.
Yes, just recently there was a unclaimed property share where you could call in and try to see if there was unclaimed property, and that's one of the major reasons it's there, because your son didn't know that you had a life insurance policy from 1965. So it's really important, if you don't want to discuss it now, put that kick the bucket list with your important documents.
Well, Kimberly, always such a pleasure to have you on. I always learn a lot from you. Thank you for being here this morning. We look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
And if people want to find out more information, very easy, just to call your office. You say you're the one that answers the phone. You'd love to hear from them.
Well, I don't always answer, but I am very easily accessible, and I'm the first point of contact after the person who answers. So,
Kimberly, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Again, there is her website and the number to call. We, of course, will put more info on our website as well, tvmorningblend.com.